Alrighty, good morning, PTNI's Daily Show. My name is Brian Melrose. I'm one of the lead faculty in the spine division, and honored to be teaching both cervical and lumbar courses live to you guys around the country. Stoked to be here on a Thursday for Leadership Thursday to talk about leaders making leaders. I know that sounds kind of funny, but I think it's really important that we talk about leadership in the kind of PT space and kind of what really drives that. So I want to start off with a quote from Tom Peters. So he is a writer in the business management space. Famous for a couple books like In Search of Excellence and Thriving on Chaos. And the quote that I absolutely love from Tom Peters is a true leader creates more leaders, not followers. A true leader creates more leaders, not followers. And I think it's a really interesting quote because I think when we think about leadership, there's an assumption that there's going to be a lot of followers and that's the purpose of it. But if we zoom out and think about it more in terms of a leader's perfect purpose, it's less about getting lots of followers. And at some point with success as a leader, there's just too much to do. The sole leader can't do everything, and they almost need to delegate or spread that load across. And so the underlying purpose of a leader is really to prepare and bring up other leaders underneath them for a common goal and purpose, hopefully to inspire, guide, and motivate folks like in a particular direction. And so when I kind of read this quote and I think about our profession, it just raises the simple question of who are the leaders of our profession? Like, who are we generally following? And so, an assumption might be right off the bat, like it's the American Physical Therapy Association. The APTA is kind of the leaders in our field. And I think in a certain way, they are leaders in terms of, maybe doing some background work, helping with reimbursement rates, and they do have a purpose. But for each of us, like in a clinical setting, that's not leadership. I mean, that's not guiding us and motivating us and moving us particularly in a direction. And so then the second question is raised. Well, if it's not them, is it a mentor? Is it somebody that we all had at some point, on internships, or maybe that we have the opportunity of being in the clinic with? And I think that makes a little bit more sense. I mean, I remember early in my career, I was fortunate enough to find ICE, and I looked up to Jeff and some of the other faculty, and got really into Tim Flynn, and that those were mentors that I had the opportunity to eventually overlap with and learn from, and they were good leaders. But it does raise the question is if why can't you? Why can't you be a leader for the profession? Like you can move into that space. And so when I think about all of us being leaders in the profession, there's really three different levels that I think we can move into in terms of leadership. And the first is the most obvious. The first place where you can be a leader for physical therapy in your community is simply with your patients. And we always talk about this on our weekend courses is being about it and leading from the front and kind of being an example in the clinic for the folks that you're trying to motivate in a particular direction and maybe do something different, whether that's increasing their tissue capacity, whether that's sleeping differently, whether that's eating differently. Any of those things that you're trying to motivate them to do, you have to then model. And so that's why we always love doing a fitness forward, kick your butt quickly style workout at the end of Saturday on our weekend courses. And the first thing we talk about on Sunday is this exact concept is you have to lead from the front. The cool part with that though is if you're a leader and you demonstrate some of these skills and this work ethic, it's contagious. Your patients become leaders for themselves in terms of their health and support other folks in the community and send them your way. And so you're already being a great leader right now in the clinic. And I just want to highlight the idea that if you thought about yourself more in that leadership role for your patients, would you do anything differently? The second space where we can really be a good leader isn't necessarily in the clinic with our patients, but in the clinic with other providers. And so, I remember coming to some of the places I've worked, before we ended up opening up our own spot here in Northern Colorado at Onward. Prior to that, I was in a lot of more traditional clinics, and they were not fitness forward. I mean, to put it simply, it was really about bands and body weight and heavy manual therapy. I mean, I even remember during the pandemic, like when you know, exercise equipment was 2 or 3 times its normal cost. I went and bought kettlebells to just simply bring them to the clinic I was working at because I knew that my folks needed load. Like, that had to happen, and that was what I needed to do. I tried for 2 years to get a barbell and a rack, and it just never happened, but I was committed to kind of modeling that even in a space where it wasn't the norm, it wasn't the tradition there, and so I remember doing EMOMs with my timer out and having folks lift weights, and me and my patient looked like a duck out of water compared to everyone else. But I had a purpose. I was trying to be a leader for my patient, but in turn, I was also being a leader for other clinicians. And the funny thing is as I stuck to that more and more and continued to do it, I eventually got pulled to the side and said, "Hey, I don't know what this whole EMOM thing you're doing is, but do you think you could do a presentation on that?" And so, me and another colleague did. We introduced some functional fitness style lifting to the other clinicians at our particular site. We talked about kind of increasing tissue capacity. We talked about kind of, using load in the clinic to kind of move patients further than just symptom reduction, but into tissue capacity and almost prevention. And over the next couple months, it was so cool to see the culture kind of change. But it took somebody, kind of again, moving in there and being a leader. What happened with that though is the domino effect. At some point, I wasn't the only person doing that anymore. It just became the culture of the clinic. Everybody began doing a little bit more loading and taking their patients through a little bit more functional fitness. And so in turn, leaders made other leaders, and it spread to the other clinics. And I think it's just something that I never could have foreseen on the front end. But we all have that opportunity. If you take that time, to work with your patients, or maybe even start a workout with the other clinicians at lunch 1 day a week, do the gut check. It's already there. It's already primed for folks who are into functional fitness. You can be a leader to the other clinicians at the place that you work. You don't have to be the manager, you don't have to be the owner. You just have to model the behavior that again, is right and you want to do anyways, but other folks will follow. The final opportunity I think we have to be a leader, and this is really where we miss the mark the most as a profession, is being better leaders in the community for our profession. Like how we push physical therapy to the general population and really the rest of the medical field. Because to be honest, they really have no clue what the hell we have to offer folks. They really don't understand what we can do. And so again, if we continue to sit back and look for leaders like APTA to run Facebook ads and continue to try and kind of educate that way, I don't know if that's enough. And so, really, what my call to action is in this kind of Leadership Thursday is encouraging you to maybe be a leader in your community. What can you do in your community to be a little bit of a leader for the profession, for this health and wellness, for this capacity? And I think what that boils down to is a challenge I have for everybody listening to this podcast. If you're hearing my voice right now and you stuck around this long, I want to challenge you to, at one point in 2025, take 1 hour of the entire rest of the year and do something in the community that you are passionate about. Could be any population, work hardening, pelvic floor, barbell athletes, runners, whatever the hell you're into. Take 1 hour this year and do some sort of community outreach. Could be a presentation, could be a short after class stretching demonstration, whatever it is, but something that you're passionate about and something that can move the profession in the right direction from an awareness standpoint. And you step into that leadership space. And the cool thing with that is, again, if you are a true leader in that space, you will get some followers and some folks that might be interested in working with you at the clinic. But more importantly, I think you're demonstrating the leadership of the health and wellness space. Who better to be there? Think about it. I mean, if we zoom out, on one side, we have the sick care system, right? CrossFit always jokes about that. It's not healthcare, it's responsive. But again, it's certain coats, it's white coats, it's people who look through other lenses at the medical system. They love surgery, they love imaging, they love drugs. We want to keep them away from that. The real magic bullet to solving a lot of folks' problems, whether that's pain or whether that's metabolic disease, is fitness. And you are perfectly positioned in your community between those two areas. But our voices aren't loud enough. You can't just sit back and clock in and clock out and expect the reputation of physical therapy to change. So I'm challenging you for 1 hour, do some 30-minute, 60-minute presentation sometime in the next year in your community in something that you love to talk about. And I believe if you do that, not only will the kind of reputation, opinions, and awareness of our profession change, but you'll see that you affect other folks. There's other leaders out there. They live in other professions. There's chiropractors, there's personal trainers, there's other folks that want to help people between that medical system and kind of true fitness. And once you can connect with those individuals, it creates more of this groundswell effect. And again, leaders continue to make other leaders and touch more lives. I think the only other thing that I want to say about this is we've seen that with ICE, and Jeff has talked about that on some previous podcasts. When ICE, really grew 2017, 2018, Jeff couldn't do everything anymore. And it's so cool to see all of the other division leads. I mean, we're blessed in Spine. Zach and Jordan do a great job of kind of leading our division, but you see that across the other divisions in ICE. Now there's a lot of leaders, and again, building up other leaders to change in a certain space. So think about maybe how you can be a leader in your community for the profession. Get out there at some point this year. The only other things I want to wish you on this Thursday is a good rest of the day, and also highlight a couple courses we have coming up for spine. If you're interested in lumbar, Zach Morgan is out in Austin, Texas, or Leander, Texas, on March 1st and 2nd. So that's this weekend. A couple seats left, so go ahead and grab those if you're in that area. Should be throwing down some good manips and some great exercise progressions for lumbar spine. My next course is out in April, the 12th and 13th, out in New Orleans. Never been there, super excited. Would love to get some more people at that course. So if you're out in that New Orleans area and would like to hear about lumbar spine, go ahead and head that way. For cervical, we got Jordan out in Boise on March 8th and 9th. Again, a couple of seats left for that if you guys are out that way. And then Miller is out in Espinal, looks like PA, March 15th and 16th. So if you're looking for some live courses with spine, go ahead and hit that. If not, again, hope you had a great lecture and have a great Thursday. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you.